Yo, what's up guys? This is Terpchi speaking. Thanks for tuning into the video. I hope you are doing okay. And I hope you are ready to learn something new. In this video, this is going to be a quick tutorial on Roblox scripting and a brief overview of pretty much Roblox Studio and scripting as well. It won't be in too much detail. I just want it to be a quick little guide, just something that you can look back at as reference. But yeah, so obviously if you do have coding experience, this will be a bit more easier to pick up, but if you do not have any coding experience, do not worry. This video is going to be simple enough for you to understand, and hopefully we all learn something new by the end of this video. If you do enjoy the video, just be sure to leave a like, and let's get straight into it. So before I start coding, I want to show you the Roblox Studio application. So currently I've got open a brand new place. You can see the main window here, you can see your Explorer window here, and your property window. If you don't have these open for some reason, you just go into view and you just switch them on by clicking on Explorer, your properties, and most importantly switch on your output window. So you click on this button here. So pretty much your Explorer, it just shows everything. So it shows your service, your objects, your maps, your players, pretty much everything that you can think of in the game. Your properties is self-explanatory. It just pretty much just shows data and information about whatever you click on in the Explorer. So if you click on a part, it'll show you information about the material. It'll show you information about the transparency, the name, stuff like that. And lastly, your output window pretty much is if an error pops up in your code or whatever pops up, like an error, it'll show up in your output window, or if you were to write down a message, it'll also show up in your output window. This is your most important window. You should definitely have it open as a programmer. And yeah, and just before we start coding, one more thing is, if you want to test, you can simply press on the play button here, or you just go in the test tab and you just press play here. If you don't have play, just hold the arrow and just press play here, and pretty much you get to play test your own game. You load in as a player and everything, and yeah. So now let's actually get into scripting. So what we do is we open up workspace. So just click on the arrow here, click on the plus, and we're going to search up script. So as you can see here, you get 3 scripts. So the grayed out script is pretty much the server. The local scripts is pretty much only clients can run it, and the purple script is we don't really need it for now, so you can just ignore it. So just remember again, the grayed out script is only the server can run it. The blue script, so local script, can only be run by the client. And what we're going to do now is we're going to put in the server script. Also, if you don't know what a server or a client is, this entire game place right now that you see is ran on a server, and the client is simply just a player that joins the game. So that is a client. So in the workspace, we can only put in server scripts. So just put in the grade script, and you'll be open with a print hello world statement. So pretty much what this does is it just writes out hello world into the output. Whatever's in between these 2 brackets means it'll be put into the output. So if I literally put in any sentence, anything that you can think of, it'll always be written into the output. You can also do arithmetic. So if I wanted to do 2 plus 4, for example, I press play, it'd get out 6. If I wrote down other arithmetics, it'd still do that correctly. If I wanted to join two strings or 2 words together, I can do this. I could do hi, then comma, and then dot dot hi world. It's like that, and you can see that it prints out hi world just like that. So that's what print does. Moving on, I want to show you something called a variable. If you've done coding before, you would have heard of it. If you haven't, pretty much means that you can store any sort of data into a box. So just imagine you have a box where you can store a bottle, and later down the script you can get that box again and you can get out that bottle to use it. That's just a quick example of what it is pretty much. So to make a variable, you simply write down local, you give the variable a name. So it has to start with the alphabet. I mean, it cannot start with a number or a special symbol. So I'm going to just name this A equals, and then you write down equals, and then you give it the data that you want it to store. So for now I'm going to store an integer. So integer is just pretty much a whole number, like 1. You can store multiple other data types or numbers and stuff, so I could literally do that if I wanted to do. I could also do something called a float. So a float pretty much means you just put a decimal point and you just put in more numbers, just like that. So that is a float. You can put in other data types, so something called a string. So a string is pretty much just a set of characters. So it can be a word, it could be a sentence, it could be even a single letter. So if I did this would count as a string. If I did hello, this is the world, this is also a string. And if I just did one letter, this would also be a string. So to create a string, you just pretty much create a word or a sentence or a character and just surround it with quotation marks. You can either do it with the double quotation marks, or you can do it with the single ones, but I personally just prefer doing the double quotation marks. So that is your string. Lastly, you can also set this variable to a boolean. So a boolean pretty much just is true or false. So I can either just write down literally true, or you just literally write down false, just like that. Yeah, so that is a variable. So I'm just gonna give a local a equals 1, local b equals 2, and now what I'm gonna do is refer to the variable in a print statement. So if I were to press play, it'll print out 1. It does this by, it sees that it's a variable and it'll see the value within the variable. So as you can see, it's a 1. If I wanted to do arithmetics, like similar to before, I'll just do a plus b, it'll add up both those values and it'll be 3. So that is a quick overview of what variables is. Now I'm going to move on to something a bit more interesting. So it's called a function. So a function is pretty much just a code that you can reuse throughout the script. So it's similar to a variable, but aside from the fact that it's a lot more versatile. So to create a function, just simply write down the keyword function, give it a name. Once again, follow the same ruling as variables, no numbers, no nothing in the beginning. So I'm just going to give it an example. So example 1, and then just put in your brackets and you press enter, and then you write down the piece of code you want it to run. So I'm going to write down this is an example, and then afterwards I'm just going to write down example 1, and I'm going to press play, and as you can see, it writes down this as an example. The way this works is pretty much the function is called example1, and when I write it down the script, this is called a call. So I'm calling to the function example1, it'll run this piece of code here. So I'll just write down the message, this is an example. There's two things that you can do with functions, additional things I mean. You can add a parameter to it. So I can add in a and comma b, for example. And I could do a plus b, similar to what I was doing before. And then over here, I just provide the variables for a and b. So I'm going to do 1, 2. And what this basically means is 1 gets assigned to a and 2 gets assigned to b. And then it'll write down the total of these two added. So as you can see, it pretty much assigns it to the position of where it is in the commas. So obviously I don't need only 2, I can add in 3 if I wanted to. I could do that, plus c, and then I could do 3. But that's what you can do. One last example is, if I really wanted to, I could make the function return something. So if I wanted to return the value of all of that, so let's say I did return a plus b plus c, and then I did local total equals that, print total. So what this will do is example 1 takes in the parameters a, b, c, and local total will call the example. We'll call the example1 function. We'll set a, b, c to 1, 2, 3. The function will add it all up and return the value. And now the variable total is now set to that returned value. And if I were to press play, I shall get 6, which occurs down here. So that is pretty much everything that you can do with functions. Yeah, so moving on, I want to show you how you reference an instance in the Explorer. So all you want to do is, let's say first of all I create a part. Got my part here now, I'm going to move it to here. I'm now going to do game.workspace.parts. So what this does is me pretty much referencing the part now. So pretty much workspace is a service. Everything that you see here is a service, and then everything underneath a service is called an object. So part is an object or an instance, for example, on the workspace. So I'll do game.workspace.part, and the next dot means I can access the properties. So if I want it to be transparent, I just do transparency equals 1. And as you can see, let's remember the position. And if I press play, it's now completely transparent. I can't see it, of course. If I wanted to change the color to red, for example, let's say I wanted it to be this red. You can see here it's named really red. So I'm gonna Control Z that equals brickcolor.new really red. If I were to press play, you can see that it turns red. But if I were to stop, you can see that it's not red actually. So that's an example of referring to a instance. Over here, you don't have to use game.workspace.part. You can just simply replace this. I'm going to do local part equals that. So this is a variable called part that is referring to that part instance, and this would still work the same, as you can see there. And lastly, with this hierarchy, you can also, let's say I put the script underneath the part now. You could do script.parent. So parent just means it goes up the hierarchy. So from the script, it goes up to the part. And once again, brickcolor equals brickcolor.new really red. A quick tip, by the way, if you're typing and you see the entry like here, if you press tab, it'll completely finish it, just like that. Very useful. But if I were to press play, you can see that it turns red again. So that is a quick example of referring to an instance. Now I want to show you what, I'm going to move the script back to the workspace. I'm going to show you what an event is. So an event pretty much means a piece of code that is run when something is triggered. So for example, if I wanted this part to trigger when I'm walking on it, like a player is walking on it, I want it to trigger the touch event. So to do that, I would simply do game.workspace.parts.touched. So touch is the event name. I'll do :connect function, and some events allow you to pass on a parameter. So for example, the touched event, you get the parameter called other part, and it just means the part that just touched it basically. You don't have to call it that, of course. I'm just gonna call it part 2, for example. And what I want to do is I want it to print out the part 2's name. So print part 2 dot, I'm accessing the properties now, name dot dot, which means I'm adding onto the string. So dot dot has touched the part. Let me see if this works. As you can see, it says base part has touched the part because base part is the actual massive part you see. But if I were to walk on it, you can see that it's now printing parts of the character. So my left upper leg, my right upper leg, and if you go on workspace, go underneath my character model, you can see that it's in my character model pretty much. But yeah, so that's just one example of an event. You could do one additional event that I'll show you. So for example, with the players service, you can do game.players.player added, which is the event name, connect function. And as you can see, with the player added event, a player parameter gets passed on. So this is simply just a player that is joining the game. You can do print player.name quotation mark has joined the game. And if I press play, you can see Tab2 has joined the game is written into the output. So the way this works is pretty simple. When the players service detects a player is added, so during the game, aka, it connects to this function. It passes on the player that is joining the game as a variable, and it now just pretty much writes out the player's name and then joins it together with this message. So it has joined the game, and it writes it out into the output. So those are two very simple events that you can use as an example. But of course there's way more events. You'd have to go on the Roblox Dev Wiki though, because this is just a brief overview, or I could make a tutorial on it. I'll have to see. But yeah, that is your event. There's two more things I want to teach you before I end this video. So the other thing is called an if condition. So if I did if 1 + 1 = 2, then I'll just write this out quickly. Else print incorrect. So this is a very simple if condition. So an if condition pretty much checks if the condition is true, then I'll do the first code block. Otherwise, else I'll do the other code block. So over here, the condition is the left hand side has to be equal with the right hand side. So 1 plus 1, which is 2, is equal to the right hand side, which is 2. So 2 equals 2. So it'd print out correct if I were to press play. And as I can see, it says correct. But if I were to change this into 4, so 1 plus 1, which is 2, does not equal 4. So it should print out incorrect. And as you can see, it does incorrect. So this is called an if condition. Of course, you don't need this else block here. You could just leave it like this. But obviously, if I were to press play, nothing would show up. But yeah, that's your if condition explained. And lastly, I want to show you how to make a for loop. So sometimes in your coding, you'd want to make a loop so you don't have to keep copying and pasting the same lines of code. Kind of like a function, but a loop is really specific, I'd say. So I'm going to create a for loop that prints out 5 numbers, so from 1 to 5 into the output. So to do that, I would do for, I'd create the variable name, so I equals 1, comma 5 to print I. So what this pretty much does means it just pretty much sets I, so I is a variable that is created, and sets it to 1, and then it goes from 1 to 5, and then it prints out the number into the output. So if I were to press play, it goes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It does this because it'll start off at 1, it'll print out 1, it goes to the end, and then it goes back up, and then it'll set itself to 2, prints out 2, goes down, goes back up, sets itself to 3, and then pretty much repeats itself till 5. You can be a bit more advanced if you wanted to. If I wanted to make it, instead of incrementing 1, I want it to increment 2. You can add in a third number. So I'm going to increase the middle number to 10, because that will be the end number, and I'll put the increment as 2. And as you can see, instead of writing down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it'll do 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So increments of 2, for example. So that's another useful thing about for loops. Of course, there are other loops that I won't really go over in this tutorial because I just don't have enough time. The other loops is a while loop and a repeat until loop. So those are your 3 loops that are very essential, but I've only shown you the for loop. I will link it down in the description if you do want to check them out in the Roblox Dev Wiki. But yeah, I think I'm gonna end the tutorial here, the quick starter guide. I'd say that's a pretty brief explanation of some of the bread and butter stuff that you need to know while coding, and hopefully you've learned something new. Be sure to put this into practice in Roblox Studio if you haven't done so already, and if you do enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like, and be sure to subscribe and leave any comments below on what I could improve on the tutorial, and if you have any ideas for the next tutorial. But yeah, thanks for watching, and yeah, I'll catch you on the next video.